Igbo kwenu. Yeah. Cha 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 cha. Igbo kwezuonu. Yeah. Oko nyamini nyamini.
And that is what the Nigerian
Koko nyamiri nyamiri. Koko nyamiri nyamiri. Ibole ibole. Igbo bunu ndamamihe. Ibole ibole. Igbo bunu ndamamihe. Ebulanyelu anamabara na ihe dị njọ ma na-emezi konye ofeke anamabara nọ n'ihe dị njọ ma na-emezi konye feke Igbo bụ ndị ike ụmụ Igbo bụ ndị ike ụmụ Igbo bụ ndị ike ụmụ Igbo bụ ndị ike koko nyamini nyamini. Good morning and ndewonu Tito Lile Duri Chineke. Thank you Chineke for bringing us together again. I'm Dibia Dr. Wonyo Husimere, and I am your host on Chiism Live today. I want to, before we get started, bring in my co-host, Dibia Onyoha, who's going to start us off with a prayer.
Chineke, anyị na-ekele gị n'ụbọchị taa. Anyị na-ekele gị na mmama niile ime na anyị Chineke. Anyị na-ekele gị na ngọzi niile ị gọziri anyị, ọmụmụ inyere anyị, arụ isi ike inyere anyị, ogologo ndụ inyere anyị, ihe anyị ga-eji izu ụmụ inyere anyị. Chineke, anyị na-ekele gị Chineke, nọọrọ anyị otu isi nọọrọ anyị ụnyaahụ, nọọrọ anyị taa, nọọrọ anyị echi, gọzie anyị, mezuoro anyị onye kere ụwa. Anyị na-ekele gị. Ndị anyị ji aka were tinye n'obi anyị hụrụ anya anọkwaghị Chineke, biko gọzie wa gị na wa nọrọ n'udo, gọzie aha nne ọha dada nwa bụ ọsọ Chukwuemeka Ozue, gọzie ndị niile anyị hụrụ anya anọkwaghị Chineke, biko gọzie wa ọnwachi Iboro tọpụkwa ahụ mma magbu ife anyị ghara afụ tọkpa akpọtụkwa anyị. Anyị ekele ụwa, anyị na-ekele gị site ugbu a ruo mgbe na-ebighị ebi. Ọfọ ya gazie ise o.
Perfect.
Oke udo, so udo, n'ọnwayọ, sọ Chukwu nọ ebe a. Oke udo, so udo, n'ọnwayọ, sọ Chukwu nọ ebe a. Oke udo, so udo, n'ọnwayọ, sọ Chukwu nọ ebe a. Perfect peace, only peace, no be still, for only God is here. Perfect peace, only peace, be still, for only God is here. May everywhere of our lives be light. May all our acts be crowned with good. And may the world prosper through our ministry in global faith forever and ever.
And so it is. He said, yes. Yagazie. Thank you, Dibia, for that wonderful start. And I don't know how many of you did this, but this morning I took the time and went outside, took my shoes off, because as I had stated to you before, you got to get grounded. And to get grounded, you have to take your shoes off. Sometimes it's a habit that you have to develop. Walk around without your shoes. Connect to earth. If you want to go for a walk where a traveled path that you know you're not going to get your feet hurt, travel bare feet. Because believe it or not, some of the ions that are inside of you as electrical charges that come to you even through your house, it's in your body, and Mother Earth draws all of that out. So this morning, that's exactly what I did. I stood out there bare feet in the grass, and I felt so good. And I poured my libations before I came here, and we're going to pour libations. As we say, Omenala. Pouring libations is our tradition. So we really can't get started on anything we want to talk about unless we pour libations and give thanks to the Most High. Today, I want to focus libations on love. When you read what's going on in our world, when you see, there is so much pain, and we need love. We're going to need to ask the ancestors and Chineke, of course, first and foremost, to interject and fill us with love, because this is what's going to help. By God's grace, is going to help kind of change what we're observing in our world. So I have my cup, my wooden cup. Well, actually, this is my kikombe. This is my Kwanzaa cup. And as you can see, it has Kwanzaa in front of it, because I believe in the principles of Kwanzaa: unity, love. So I'm not going to go through all the 7 principles, but I'm just going to start with saying that we need love, unity, peace, joy. And so today we pour libations, and I ask all of you, if you don't have it, please go and get yours. Make sure that you have yours. Get a bowl, get a cup. If you don't have anything set aside at this moment, and you don't need anything special, just bring a cup and bring a plate, a dish of some sort, and let's pour libations together, because this is really a very good way of focusing our thoughts and our minds and everything we're doing personally. If you're not engaged in this activity, you're missing out. And that is one of the things that is so sad that our African people are losing. And that is that connection, taking the time to pour libations and reconnect. Today, we're now going to, I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to go ahead and pour libations. We're not going to have Dibias with us today, because he had a conflict today, and he apologized, and he'll be with us next week. For those of you who are looking to see him today, he's not going to be with us. And our gentleman from Kenya is going to be with us next week. Okay, so and I'm going to ask you to please make sure that you share this video, share, because there are people who are going to benefit from our discussion today, and certainly from libations. Chineke ekekerowa, obasidie luchukwu bioma, olodumare tamona jinya mika tonda nyemi nkosi, uvuzilele. Chineke that has names in different tongues. If I didn't call out the name of Chineke in your tongue, you know where it is. You go ahead and use that. And I say, thank you for welcoming us into your bosom today, into your space. Today we pour libations to north wind, to the south wind, to the east and west winds, where our ancestors originate. Whoever your ancestors are, they had an origin. And ours is Africa. The world is Africa for the most part. So we pour in libation for every human being on this earth. Dear Chineke and all the honorable ancestors, today we are focusing on love, loving without boundaries. Today, Chineke, we ask you bless us and teach us how to love ourselves, our families, our communities, our things, who we are, every aspect of our being, our scarifications, our traditions, our clothing, whatever it is that belong to us, Chineke, we ask you to teach us today. Put it in our minds that it is important and we are important. Love of self is the beginning of the journey. So we say, Ise. Today, Chineke, we ask you to teach us how to love our to have an open mind to love without resistance. Sometimes we resist even when we are loved by you. Teach us not to be resistant to your love, because this is your gift to us. Your love is your gift to us. So teach us today how we should incorporate your love into our soul, into our being, and stop being resistant. To say, open our hearts to love without fear. Without fear. And again, I'm talking about loving us, loving our children, loving our husbands, our wives, our girlfriends, our boyfriends, our people. Teach us, remind us that we matter and they all matter. And we don't necessarily need to look elsewhere for love. Teach us to open ourselves to giving and receiving without anger, resentment, or expectations of returns or rewards. Just love. You can't love a person that you're angry with all the time. So we ask that our anger is modified to turn into love. Chineke, teach us how to speak from the place within our being that is love. Speak love, not hate. Speak joy, not weakness. Not speak peace, not war. Obasi de lubika na yogota. Yinanyaka onaranya aho. It is so hard for us. Ndi banya na akpari wa warega no. Warega no Chineke warega no ifa na akpata si. Taima ile doza lo wanyanya fu wanyanya. Many of us don't understand the power of loving, and that to love ourselves is to love you. Because we ask you to help us to understand that love is the fulfillment of your law, the fulfillment of your desire, a fulfillment of our desire to do your will. We want to do your will, but just Chineke, many of us don't even know. Ancestors, we ask you to intervene on behalf of some of us who are lost, who have lost their way. Many of us have lost our way. We don't know where we're going. Sometimes we just follow wherever everybody else is going, at the risk, at the expense of where we should be. Chineke Biko, interject. Ancestors, look at us. Nyaranyaka, I find I don't know. Chineke Bika na Riogo, let us firmly accept and embrace all that we are, one with love and love, and a shining example of love, your love. I free banyanya, all go kaina fwanya. Once we love each other, it is Chineke that we are loving. The way to express love for Chineke is not to hate our fellow man. It's not to despise our fellow man, but to honor Chineke. We have to honor ourselves first and foremost. Then we must also honor those who have the right to honor themselves as well. Teach us to live the truth of your words, so that we may be a blessing from you to ourselves and all others. Chineke, teach us that we are a part of you. We're not less than. May we be a living lesson of love today and always. And as I said earlier, love begins with me. Love begins with us. And we must speak that into the universe. Our love begins with us. Chineke biko baisa. Baira anya maino. If we don't listen, if we don't want to listen, open these ears that are stuffed with nonsense so that we can hear, we can see, we can hear you. We pour libations in gratitude for all the thousands of our ancestors that continue to surround us, that will continue to take the journey with us until we reach the promised land. You see, we're pouring libations in remembrance of all of our own personal ancestors. If it was not for them, we would not be here. We are here because of our African ancestors. If you're white, it's because of your white ancestors. You have a right to celebrate your ancestors, as do we. So when we pour libations and call upon our ancestors, we're doing the right thing. We're not honoring our history, our people, our Chineke. So today I ask all of you to please take the time and call out the names of your ancestors who have made it to the age of 80. Chineke, kelerem ke oke onyoha, ha ke oke onyoha, wugo maboso, obi mosa, no onyoha, Dr. Martin Luther King, or those who made Rosa Parks. Please call out wherever you are, call out the names of your ancestors. When you call out the names of your ancestors, that means that they live, they continue to live. When you call out the names of your ancestors, that means that you respect them, you honor them. And those that whose names we didn't call today, is not because we want to be rude. It's not because we don't want to acknowledge them. It's because they are so numerous, obviously. Chineke and our honorable ancestors, they are people in our midst who have specific desires and wishes and concerns. So now we ask for those special requests from members of our organization and some that we don't even know. But there were some requests that were sent to us. And so I just want to tell Chineke, ask Chineke, not tell, of course, but to ask Chineke to please offer these blessings and to give thanks for some of the blessings already offered, for the blessings upon Madia Onyoha, the blessings for the new endeavors that she's into now. And we thank Chineke for the wonderful opportunity that you've given her that will satisfy her financial needs personally and for her family. And we say, we pour libations today to thank you for continued blessing upon Obi Onyoha Pierce and her wonderful husband, Roger Pierce. May nothing but goodness fill every nook and cranny of their marital home, and for every manifested blessings that they've already received, he say. We pour libations today to thank Chineke for Dibias Onyoha and his professional blessings. We know that you bless people in different ways, that you continue to bestow upon him more blessings than even he can imagine. Thank you, Chineke. In gratitude, we pour libations for my daughter, Kalena, entering her 3rd year as a doctoral student. Keep her mind open. Keep her heart open. Give her clarity and hope. Help her to concentrate and keep moving forward. We are so proud of what she's doing, all in your glory, Chineke, and in the glory of the ancestors. He say, we pray that Chineke and ancestors glorify the path that my son has set during his travels outside of Georgia. May everything that he went to do become a reality for him, and may he continue to grow in mind and spirit, and so it is. We ask for your support for our daughter, Adora, who is absolutely doing what she must do for a good and bright future for herself and my grandchildren, our children, her children, we say. We pray for continued prosperity at school for Emeka Onyoha, concentration and genuine humility as he pursues his academic journey. These are wishes that people have sent to us. I pray for Nene Onyoha that she continues to journey forth with purpose, humility, and success. I pour libations for healing for Ichie and much success in all his new endeavors. I pour libations for continued success for my niece, Amani Wells Onyoha, for her health and continued prosperity. I pour libations for the successes in all my businesses and all the people in it. May they all continue to find goodwill in all they do. I pour libations and ask Chineke and the ancestors to bless all the members of Chiism, Ogodianism, the families around the world. Keep your loving arms around Ukuna Charles, who continues to be a part of this family. He said, ask you to put your loving arms around Akachi Azubike, who continues to be supportive of everything we're doing. Thank you. May God bless all of you. Those that I didn't call your names, those who continue to be a part of us, all of you are precious. And we ask God to come and ancestors to come into your home and just shower you today with nothing but goodness, nothing but blessings, because you deserve it. You deserve it, and you deserve it. That is the love that we want to share with you today. That is the love that we ask Chineke to bestow upon you today. And so it is. Ise Yagazie Ofo. Oge nke Chineke kama chere ya no maburu na oge ahụ dị anya chere ya ekwedula n'ukobi gị damba chere ya n'oge ọ ga-abịa kwa chere ya Chukwu kigwe na-echeta gị chere ya n'ime ọ na-echefu gị
chere ya.
Ihe banyere gị, ha niile na-emetụ Chineke
n'obi, chere oge ya. Woo!
Woo!
I am so blessed this morning. I'm telling you, okay, Dibias, you have.
You did bless your stepchildren, bless
Yes.
everybody wherever you are, all our members, all those who are not members, good health, good health, good health, happiness, joy. This is what we're asking for today. Feel it in your heart. If you don't feel it right now, you won't feel it today. But you have to welcome these blessings that I have asked the ancestors to give you today.
Yes.
That you welcome, you put it in your heart, embrace it, sing it like a song. Because you know what? The fact that you are here with us, the fact that you are still alive, inhaling and exhaling, you are still above ground. Woo! What blessing that is. So I just put my hand around in this water and just drip it around myself and around anything difficult that may come my way today will dissipate. It is not going to happen. And I ask for the same thing for all of you. No toto, bokere, maabale. And so, you know, I'm feeling good today, don't you?
I haven't had this extent of, I always meditate and I do all that stuff, but at least on the level on this show, the libation, the prayer was really, really heartwarming. And I just feel so blessed to be alive. I think I spoke to you a few days ago. I had some challenges when I was at work, and I didn't feel good and all that. I don't know. It's because I flipped another day of a year of the calendar. Who knows what it is? But whatever it is, with faith in Chineke and having my wife and you, of course, my biggest supporters and the advices that I've gotten from my wife and the things that she's done and all that, I'm feeling better. I also made some resolutions.
Yes.
Which I told you is I have to lose some weight, cut out the cabs and do all those things. The Chineke that I seek is in me. The changes that I need to make in my life or the blessings that I need in my life, I am partly responsible for seeing those blessings through. So I hope that everybody out there listening to our show understand that sometimes your prayer is solvable through you. Chineke is in you. You just have to make that decision to be on the same, wavelength as your chi. Once you make that decision, you will find that happiness is never a fleeting notion. It's always there. It's within your grasp. You just have to make a decision to be one with chi. Go out there and change your life. You guys here to all.
You know that song that we say, yes,
I remember that.
You are so blessed. Everything that you have is free. It's free.
Yes.
It's free. So when you have and share, and not only share, people think you have to share money. No, you don't have to just share money. You can share goodwill. You can share kindness. All of that is part of what Chineke has given you. You know? Chineke give you all of that. So you're blessed already. Feel good. Feel good. When I see somebody, with a sad face, at the mall, I have a tendency to, it's just something I just started doing because you'll find a lot of people are just walking around in misery, So I just have this little note that I may just hand to them and say, this is for you. And I just walk away. And then they open it, those sweet little nuggets, and they look at it and they thank me. I mean, I've seen people doing that too, but I find that it's so heartwarming, for somebody to tell you, you're already blessed. Celebrate. You are here. You're here. In the village, you see a poor man and he said, you say to him, how you doing? He said, I don't know. That means I'm here. He's not counting how much chickens he's got or how much food. He says, life.
I'm here.
Bread. I'm here. I'm here. So anyway, welcome to all of you. We are all here. Thank you. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. And the topic of today is really quite interesting. Ezi Agụmakwụkwọ Omenala. Real education. Real education is learning from your own cultural backyard, purview, whatever you want to call it. But unfortunately, many of us are not raised learning in our own languages. And it does have some drawbacks. It has some drawbacks. I think I shared with you guys one time. I was at the mall and there's this cute little boy, very well dressed, with the mother had him smartly dressed, and he's just the cutest little thing. And I went up to him and I said, and I spoke in Igbo. I said, and he looked at me. I said, is that Guinea? In other words, what's your name? He couldn't speak Igbo. Then the mother told me, please don't speak that thing to him. He doesn't speak Igbo. There's no pride in that. There's no pride. As a matter of fact, you're not aiding in his learning. Not just learning about who he is, but learning about who his ancestors were, learning about who his parents are. So this is such a critical thing to learn in your language. I'm going to play this video. Some of you may have seen it, and I think you need to hear it. So, Yudi, I'm going to take you out.
Yeah.
Take my stuff out. And I'm going to play this video. Very fascinating. And then when we come back, I hope all of you, where you are, that you pay attention to this woman. It was when I saw this video, I said, oh no, I have to share it for those who haven't seen it, so that you can hear her perception about what a privilege it is to learn in her language, and what it did to her not to learn in her language earlier. So, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Looking at the alphabet sheet reminded me of the fact that not much has changed in the education curricula in Africa. Some decades back, I was taught out of a similar alphabet sheet. And because of that, I struggled for years. I struggled to reconcile my reality with the formal education I received. I had identity crisis. I looked down on my reality. I looked at my ancestry. I looked at my lineage with disrespect. I had very little patience for what my life had to offer around me. Why? A is for apple. A is for apple. A is for apple, is for that child in that part of the world where apples grow wild. Who has an apple in her lunch bag? Who goes to the grocery store with her mom and sees red, green, yellow, apples of all shapes and colors and sizes? And so introducing education to this child with an alphabet sheet like this fulfills one of the major functions of education, which is to introduce the learner to an appreciation of the learner's environment and a curiosity to explore more in order to add value. In my own case, when and where I grew up in Africa, apple was an exotic fruit. 2-3 times a year, I could get some yellowish apples with brown dots, signifying thousands of miles traveled, warehouses stored in to get to me. I grew up in the city to very financially, comfortable parents, so it was my dignified reality. Exactly the same way cassava fufu or ugali would not regularly feature in an American, Chinese, or Indian diet. Apples didn't count as part of my reality. So what this leads to me, introducing education to me with A is for apple, made education an abstraction. It made it something out of my reach, a foreign concept, a phenomenon for which I would have to constantly and perpetually seek the validation of those it belonged to for me to make progress within it and with it. That was tough for a child. It would be tough for anyone. As I grew up and I advanced academically, my reality was further separated from my education. In history, I was taught that the Scottish explorer, Mungo Park, discovered the Niger River. And so it bothered me. My great-great-grandparents grew up quite close to the edge of the Niger River. And, I mean, it took someone to travel thousands of miles from Europe to discover a river right under their nose. No. What did they do with their time? Playing board games, roasting fresh yams, fighting tribal wars. I just knew my education was preparing me to go somewhere else and practice and give to another environment that it belonged to. It was not for my environment where I grew up. And this continued, this philosophy undergirded my studies all through the time I studied in Africa. It took a lot of experiences and some studies for me to begin to have a change of mindset. And I will share a couple of the remarkable ones with us. I was in the United States in Washington, D.C., studying towards my doctorate. And I got this consultancy position with the World Bank Africa region. And so I remember one day, my boss, we were having a conversation about, on some project, and he mentioned a particular World Bank project, a large-scale irrigation project that cost millions of dollars in Niger Republic that was faltering sustainably. He said this project wasn't so sustainable, and it bothered those that instituted the whole package. But then he mentioned a particular project, a particular traditional irrigation method that was hugely successful in the same Niger Republic where the World Bank project was failing. And that got me thinking. And so I did further research, and I found out about TASA. TASA is a traditional irrigation method where 20 to 30 centimeter wide and 20 to 30 centimeter deep holes are dug across a field to be cultivated. And then a small dam is constructed around the field. And then crops are planted across the surface area. What happens is that when rain falls, the holes are able to store the water and appropriate it to the extent that the plant needs, the water. The plant can only assimilate as much water as needed until harvest time. Niger is 75% scorched desert. So this is something that is a life or death situation, and it's been used for centuries. In an experiment that was conducted, a plot of land, two similar plots of land, were used in the experiment, and one plot of land did not have the TASA technique on it, similar plots. The other one had TASA technique constructed on it. Then similar grains of millet also were planted on both plots. During harvest time, the plot of land without TASA technique yielded 11 kilograms of millet per hectare. The plot of land with TASA technique yielded 553 kilograms of millet per hectare. I looked at the research, and I looked at myself. I said, I studied agriculture for 12 years, from primary to senior 6, as we say in East Africa, SS3 in West Africa, or 12th grade. No one ever taught me of any form of traditional African knowledge of cultivation, of harvesting, of anything that will work in modern times and actually succeed where something imported from the West would struggle, to succeed. So it was Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, former president of Tanzania, who said that you cannot develop people. People will have to develop themselves. I agree with Mwalimu. I am convinced that Africa's further transformation, Africa's advancement rests simply in the acknowledgement, validation, and mainstreaming of Africa's own traditional, authentic, original, indigenous knowledge in education, in research, in policymaking, and across sectors. This is not going to be easy for Africa. It's not going to be easy for a people used to being told how to think, what to do, how to go about it. A people long subjected to the intellectual guidance and direction of others, be it the colonial masters, aid industry, or international news media. But it is a task that we have to do to make progress. I am strengthened by the words of Joseph Shabalala, founder of the South African choral group, Lady Smith Black Mambazo. He said that the task ahead of us can never, ever be greater than the power within us. We can do it. We can unlearn looking down on ourselves. We can learn to place value on our reality and our knowledge. Thank you, Asante San. Thank you.
Forever. It is so heartwarming to hear somebody esteemed to also speak about this thing. It's been spoken about forever.
Looking at the alphabet sheet reminded me of the fact that not much has changed in the education curricula in Africa. Some decades back, I was taught out of a similar alphabet sheet.
I don't know why.
And because of that, I struggled for years. I struggled to reconcile my reality with the formal education I received. I had identity crisis. I looked down on my reality. I looked at my ancestry.
I'm just saying, I can't hear you. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, I'm having difficulty removing. Okay.
A is for apple. It's for that,
still there.
that part of the world
Okay.
where apples grow wild.
Yeah, it's StreamYard is having difficulty somehow getting rid of things. So anyway, I finally was able to remove it. But I thought that just simply says it all.
It says it all.
That says it all. And you know, every nation that is teaching their people in their language are great nations. China is a great nation because of doing that. Okay? China is doing just that. So what your thoughts? Your thoughts?
I mean, we have been at this, not just us talking about it in cheerism. If you look at great Africans like the Marcus Garveys, the Jomo Kenyattas, the Julius Nyereres, the Ahain K.O.K. Onyohas, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Patrice Lumumbas. There has been going on. And unfortunately, these people that were trying to save us, that were trying to give us the kind of future that Africa needs and deserves, since slavery and colonization, were maligned. Some of them killed, executed. You know, there's this saying that the truth shall set you free. But then you come to find out that a lot of people are not ready, they can't handle the truth. And a lot of these people that cannot handle the truth are those people, funny enough, that are being maligned by the colonizer. And of course, the colonizer doesn't, has no intentions of you being smart enough to free your mind. That is not their intention, because if you free your mind, then they can no longer exploit you. Anyway, that was a beautiful video, and it just touched my heart and just made my heart sing, because there is nobody who hears what this lady just said that will not concur and agree that we as Africans have been miseducated. And that is one of the biggest problems that we have today. Now, it begs the question, listening to her, based on what we've heard, here's the question. What is education really? What does that mean? Education is attainment of self-realization. You know, human, know thyself. That is the call of education. And it is only in relation to the environment and culture of your race that education has any meaning. Now, you may be educated, you may have your doctorate degrees, you string it to your names as handles, doctor this and doctor that. But if you're ignorant of the traditional spirituality and culture and science of your race, which is the fulcrum around which the totality of human culture gyrates, then you're simply an uneducated, even though you're literate, but you're an uneducated person alienated into the cultural vineyards of others. You are nothing but a glorified servant. So it doesn't matter to what extent you get in your education, you got the PhD and all that. If that PhD does not articulate your cultural, historical, and spiritual reality, you're not educated. You're just literate. And most of the time, the jobs that you get is just going to add to your exploiters' coffers and make them even more powerful over you. Now, what is the purpose of culture? Culture is the lifeblood of a vibrant society, expressed in so many ways in our cultures. We tell stories, we celebrate our past, we remember our past, we entertain ourselves, we imagine the future based on our culture. We imagine a future in science and in agriculture based on our history, our culture, our science, just like the lady was talking about, that in all of her education, she never knew that agricultural science was possible because it was never taught in school. What was taught to her in school was the oppressor's science, which in Africa, in the Niger Republic or in Mali, is absolutely irrelevant. It doesn't do anything because the science of Europe did not take into account the geography of Mali, of Africa, of the jungle in sub-Saharan Africa. There is nothing that we've learned from the European, as far as education is concerned, that took into account Africans' culture, Africans' history, Africa's environment. European education was designed to malign you and make you feel inferior about yourself and make you feel like you never contributed anything to civilized behavior. I mean, let's be honest, how many of us knew that the first mathematical calculation came out of Central Africa? It's called the Lebombo bones. They were used to calculate distances. That was over 35,000 years ago. If I wasn't saying it to you right now, you wouldn't know that, would you? If your education was strictly based on what they're teaching you today, based on Western educational system that it permeates all of Africa, you never would know about that. The farming science that the lady spoke about, if I hadn't watched this video right now, I wouldn't have known about it, even though I knew about some great scientific contributions that we've made through, through the years, through the centuries. Culture is the lifeblood of a society. Cultural education means the sequential and comprehensive study of the elements of various arts, heritage forms, and how to use them creatively within your own boundaries, including instruction in skills, critical assessments, critical thinking, history, arts, heritage, forms, and aesthetic judgment. And not only that, it also allows you an appreciation of other cultures that deviate from your own. And it is only through cultural education, not just from within, but also from without, that fosters relationships with other cultures and makes you understand that the diversity that you see in life is divine. That's Pan-African thinking. And for us, we need a Pan-African form of education. Now, for economic, cultural and economic revitalization of the African community globally, one of the most important aspects and the first, probably the number one, there are 5 of them, but the number one aspect of this cultural revitalization is cultural consistency. Now, let me explain something about that. Not only are we talking about sharing the same kind of history or talking about sharing the same kind of religion and language, we also understand that Africa has hundreds of different languages, if not thousands of different languages, thousands of different indigenous cultures in Africa, thousands of different indigenous religions or spirituality in Africa, but all of them pretty much having the same aesthetics, pretty much having the same understanding that from me to Chineke, there is no distance. The Zulus say the same thing. The Igbos say it, the Yoruba say it, the Ashanti say it, the Kuba tribes say it. All these different indigenous tribes in Africa say the same things. The approaches may be different because of the geography, but the core central belief in African spirituality is the same. W.E. Du Bois said that true African or true Pan-African thinking is when a people are ready to give up a little bit of themselves for the good of the whole. That's true Pan-Africanism. So even though we have this diversity, we can glean the similarities between all this indigenous culture and develop a culture that permeates all of sub-Saharan Africa so that we can historically look at ourselves as one, so that we can spiritually look at ourselves as one, so we can have a common language that unites us so that if we are a united people, then I'm no longer Nigerian with 300 million people in it. I'm no longer Liberian with maybe 5 million people in it. I'm now a continent with 1.2 billion people in it, and we could make some noise globally. So some of the things that we have to strive in our educational system is to arrive at a level of cultural consistency so that we can all, from these different diverse groups in Africa, we can boil up our fist and we're able to strike a mighty blow. That's what we need to do. Now, finally, I just want to say this, and then, you could go on about doing and speaking to us a little bit more, is, again, cultural education should include shared history, our history, spirituality, a common language, and the principles of Kwanzaa, which permeates every sub-Saharan African community.
Yes.
Umoja is unity. In Igbo, what is it? Idinotu.
Idinotu, yes.
To strive to maintain unity in the family, the community, the nation, and the race. This is one of the things that we should strive for. Kujichaligulya. What is that? Self-determination. What is that? It's in Kenga.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Kenga that leads you to the hallmarks of your akaraka, your destiny. Ujema, Ujama, Nia, purpose, cooperative economics, collective work and responsibility, self-determination, maintain unity amongst our race as a people. This is all part of what, creativity and faith and all that. This is all part of the educational system. This is all part of some of the principles that we should infuse into our educational system. And one final thing I just want to say. There's nowhere in the world that you go today and find any Black university or college that teaches in any African language. Math in Japanese is taught in Japanese, including computer science. In China, computer science and math is taught in Chinese. If you go to France, it's taught in French. You go to Germany, it's taught in German. But there is no way in Africa, not from the primary school to the secondary school or in the university, where sciences, literature, geography, history, any myriad of the components of education is taught in Yoruba, in Igbo, in Swahili, or in Ashanti, or in a myriad of African languages. We owe it to ourselves to create umoja by figuring out a central language that we could teach all children of Africa, both the ones that are in Africa, the indigenous and the diasporan Africans, because when we go to school, if you are colonized by the British, you learn how to speak English. It is not your language. If you are colonized by the French, you learn how to speak and learn in French. If you are colonized by the French people, if you are colonized by the Portuguese, like up in East Africa, you speak that stuff over there too. So if you could do that, even though through an incessant their public policy of educating Africans through a policy of blood iron, whether you like it or not, you're going to learn English because I'm your master. So for you to communicate with me and for you to be, for us to assume that there's a level of humanity in you, like just to say that you're worth their respect as a human being, you have to be able to speak English. If you could do that, you could voluntarily figure out a way to unite people of Africa under a common cultural focus. That is real education. That is what education really is all about. For us, people of African ancestry, to have a common cultural focus and look at those things that unite us, which is our history, our spirituality, our language, and finally, a common cultural calendar. All Muslims are united by the Arabic calendar. All Christians, the Gregorian, the Chinese calendar, so on and so forth. We could do the same thing in Africa and figure out how to really get educated by looking for principles that unite us as a people. And only when we're able to do that and we're able to jettison this miseducation of Africans, like Mungo Park discovering the Niger River and all that stuff when there were people there already. I mean, how do you discover a place where people already live in? If we could do that, and if we could have the kind of leadership that will emphasize the unification of Africans through an incessant educational policy.
That's right.
We'll be all right.
That's
There's still hope for the future.
That's right. He said there's still hope for the future.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just want to, for all the individuals who are listening to us, one or two of you or three of you, whatever the number is, when we talk about learning in your language, just remember one thing. It is not so much that we want to teach our children in our language. It's because two things. It's common sense. And it provides those children with continuity from the home to the school. They don't miss anything. If they go to, if you're an Igbo child and you come from an Igbo speaking family, and then you go to an Igbo school where the teacher speaks Igbo, the books are written in Igbo, the children around you speak Igbo, the transition is not as traumatic as it is you leave your home. Now, parents, think about that. Think about that. By the time your child is out of kindergarten, 70% of his or her time is school. Somebody else is teaching him, not you. They come home, you feed them, they do their homework, they go to bed. In the morning, they get up 7:30 till 3:30 in some cases. They're with somebody else. And if that person doesn't speak their language, it's frustrating. So what you're actually doing is you're setting your child back, not forward. If the child has learned that cup is iko, and you say to the child, go and iko, the child knows to go and get the cup. Then he gets to school and they tell him, go and get a cup. Well, at home, he knows this as iko. For a moment, he may see it physically, but he's not sure what you're saying. Yeah, what do you want me to do with it? He still has to understand that I'm telling you to go and get me cup. Go and get me a cup. Whereas if you had just said, he knows what you're saying. So he has to understand what you mean by go and get. First and foremost, he doesn't speak English, you understand. Then he has to know what your cup is. Then he has to understand what the heck you want him to do with the cup after he gets it. You setting him back, not forward. Now, there are a lot of people who tell you that it's important for children to learn languages, different languages. It's important. But listen to what they're saying that the child should learn. Not his language, your language. That's why some of these Karens can tell somebody, you know, you speak this, you're in America, you speak English. How many of those English-speaking families are encouraging their children round the clock to speak Spanish? How many? It's that one language, that one dominant language that, quite frankly, you use to hold your children back. It's okay if they learn English, but let English be their vernacular. Let their language be their main language, so they don't look down on their language. So they don't look down on it. We have a young woman who went to China, and she was the valedictorian, and she's speaking Chinese. Everybody's so excited. Oh my God, she speaks Spanish, but she Chinese. But she can't speak her language. I hope she can. Can she speak her language is the question. Can she speak it as fluently as she speaks Chinese? Can she write in Igbo as fluently as she writes in Chinese? They have children that are being taught in Africa right now in Chinese language. You know, first of all, they're trying to grab the English you say they have to get. Now we put that one aside. Now they got to speak Chinese. They got to write Chinese. You get them to write English. After they write English, you say, no, we'll put that aside. Now you got to, but you don't spend the time to teach them how to write in their own language. What teaching them in the language does for them, as I said earlier, is continuity. As a professor, when I teach, it's just so sad for me that I have to teach students in a language that they don't understand. Because I have some students who have actually from, you know, some of these public profit universities, you know, they don't care if the people, you know understand English or not. But these people were speaking their language. Then they are told, you can't speak your language anymore. Because guess what, UD? There is no school in Africa that would teach them their language, that they can use the language to learn. So they have to go elsewhere. Now, I grant you that Africans are very, you know, they're very resourceful. Okay? Well, they'll learn quickly. That's why they outshine everybody. Yes, I said it. It's true. African students are some of the best students they are.
They are the best students. It ain't a matter of
Here's an argument, though. Here's my argument. They know all these things, but they don't know their own.
Yeah.
When a mother says to me, don't speak that thing, she didn't even say that language. She said, don't speak that thing to my son. He doesn't understand. So I had to ask, what is that thing? You know, Igbo, he doesn't speak vernacular. He doesn't speak vernacular. He speaks English. And she's just so proud to tell me that. And, you know, I chewed her out. I said, you should be ashamed of yourself. Your 8-year-old son can't speak Igbo. You're not Togoto. When he's amongst those Igbos who can't speak English, then what?
Yeah.
They'll slow him down the river. He can't defend himself. He doesn't know anything. So the French, like you said, UD, they teach their children in French. The Chinese teach in their language. You know? So the home language that a child learns at home is very important if they can learn it in the classroom. You know? That's transition is so important. You know, they're a little bit more able to get involved in the learning process, and it speeds it up. You know, it helps them with basic learning. And it allows them to be flexible. It allows them to be innovative. It allows them to be creative with the teacher. It allows them to engage in conversations. That's why when you look at these schools and you see these children, they're sitting there. They can't say, when the teacher says, ask a question, half of them can't raise their hands. I did this in Kenya. When I went to Nairobi, Kenya, as a delegate of the United Nations WCRP, we went to a school, and, you know, these kids are speaking English. You just say, well, okay, because anytime I say work by Oka, you tell them to sing, to say something. They don't say anything. You know, just those who know how to speak English, they're the ones that will very barely raise their hands because they're not sure their English will come out very well. So, but all the other ones are sitting there. It's a simple question, but they can't answer it because it's not that they're learning English. They can't answer in the language. So I told one of the teachers, okay, this question you're asking, and these kids can't answer it, ask it in their language. Ask it. Let me see how many hands will shoot up. Don't ask in English. Ask in their language. As soon as she asked the question in their language, all the hands were all in the air. I said, you see, learning is not happening. You're frustrating the children. If you want to talk to them in the language they understand. They'll be more participatory. It'll become a participatory environment. They'll be more eager to join. They'll be more eager to say things. We are punishing our children when we deny them the opportunity to use what they learn at home at school. That is why when you tell the Spanish that their children should only speak English, yeah, they say we understand, but he's Spanish or she's Spanish, she's gonna know Spanish. That's why they fight for the schools to teach Spanish. You can teach English all you want, that's fine, but our children need to learn Spanish. Because there's nothing worse than a child leaving the country, only speaking one language, and then get to the country of their family, and they don't know, they can't respond, they can't interact. They only interact in English. You can be sold if you don't know what the people are saying. Think about that, UD. Let me say this to you. Suppose you're an Igbo man. Well, you are an Igbo man. Suppose you don't speak Igbo. Suppose you don't speak Igbo. But you come home and you want to do some kind of business, some deals, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't communicate with the person who's trying to do the deal with you in Igbo, right? Okay. But let's say that person doesn't speak English. But you tell the person who speaks English. Now remember, you can't speak the language. You tell the person who can't speak English but speaks the language to interpret for you to the man who speaks Igbo and doesn't speak English. How are you sure that he is telling him what you said?
Exactly. You can't be sure.
You can be sold out the river. You tell him that I want to pay $70 for this item. Then he says in Igbo, has 700. And then the person says yes, and you're proud of yourself. Okay.
Yeah, you've just been hoodwinked.
You've just been hoodwinked. You see, so anyway, to make a long story short, it is so imperative that we understand the importance of teaching in our language. And you did, like you said earlier, we have enough intelligent people to put together these, to put together science in the different African languages. They're called home languages. What you speak at home, your traditional language is your home language, not vernacular. For a better educational outcome for our children, we must find a way to design what they learn in their home language. It gives them the flexibility, and it's okay. They can still learn English. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's all a matter of self-pride. It's all a matter of, if I go, where can I go to in Nigeria now that anybody will sell me? You can't. In Igbo land, I don't care what your what is it? Because we have different dialects. I don't care what your dialect is. As long as I'm Igbo, I can hear what you're saying.
Absolutely.
I know what you're saying. Just because I know how to speak Igbo, because I know how to speak one Igbo, I can speak, because you know what happens? You can pick up some words that are familiar and you can put it together and know what somebody who's speaking in a different Igbo dialect is saying. So that's why if you're from Newi, you're from Abriba, you're from Lafibo, I don't care where you're from. If you speak Igbo, I will understand anything you're saying, because we were taught at home in Igbo. And some of the schools that we attended in Ogui, you know, our teachers spoke in Igbo. They spoke in Igbo. They spoke in our home language. They taught us they taught us English, but they also taught us in Igbo.
Bella and Bintu. Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I'm going to touch on what you said. That thing you just said. Being able to decipher what somebody's saying in any Igbo language in Igbo land. It's so true. And I'm just juxtaposing that to what I had said earlier on about the similarities in African spirituality, where regardless of what part of sub-Saharan Africa that spirituality is coming from, you automatically have an understanding of where they're coming from. You can decipher that similarity. You can decipher the similarity between Urumilarism, Urumila, and Cheism. For example, Shango, that has to do with the sky, you know, a deity. In Igbo land is Kamalo, right? You can see that similarity. So I was talking about that, deciphering that and being able to find a common ground that creates a level of cultural consistency for us as people of African ancestry. And then something that we've always talked about, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago, when you talked about the South America, the Mexicans and Spanish, and the children must speak Spanish and all that. I remember I was having a conversation with, when I was living in California, with this guy from Mexico. He actually bought some calendars from me, African calendar. And the conversation was really about why is it that Mexicans, the people in Nicaragua and El Salvador and all these places can't quite seem to keep up with the 21st century, or at least have the level of economic activity that their northern neighbors, you know, United States and Canada have. And he asked me, what do I think? And I had said to him, I said, the problem with you is you think speaking Spanish is your language. You have a difficulty figuring out if you're indigenous or if you're from Spain or a mixture. I said, what you guys forgot is that whatever it is that you built down south was not built upon the Mayan civilization, Aztec or Inca. I said, you forgot who you are. So whatever problems you're having in South America with the drug cartels or whatever it is that social problems you're having, I said, you guys are all Catholic. The Aztecs were never Catholic. You failed to decipher something modern out of your own culture. So you were never able to keep up, and you're going to have a hard time keeping up now, because the farce that you have in South America, or what you have in Mexico that you call the Mexican culture, is not yours. It's from your colonizer. But you were decimated so badly. Both the population and the culture was decimated so badly and surmounted with Catholicism that you lost your way. And it's going to be hard for you to keep up with those in the United States or Canada, because those in the United States or Canada did the same thing that happened did the same thing to the indigenous population of North America as was done in Central and South America. And they took control. So your challenge is trying to figure out, are you really Spaniard in South America, or are you a Mayan, Aztec, or Inca in South America? Which one are you, really? You have to make that decision. And that goes for us in Africa. What are we? This education, we call ourselves educated people, but we're unable, like Akachi just mentioned, and we talk about this all the time, we could quote all the stuff that we learned through Western education, Christopher Columbus, and we could talk about Vasco da Gama and Ferdinand Magellan and all that stuff, Julius Caesar. You know, we talk about Plato and Socrates, and we can talk about all that and regurgitate what we were taught to brainwash us so that we are tolerable to the oppressor. The oppressor has dumbed us down with their culture to the so that they are easily able to communicate with us, and we're able to communicate with them without any difficulty, not for our benefit, but for their benefit. But when it comes to African proverbs, how many of it do we know? when it comes to African history and our contributions to civilized behavior? How many of it is taught in our schools? What do we know about African navigation?
But we're educated.
But we're educated. But what do we know about the navigators that navigated from here and ended up in North America and became the Olmecs of North America? What do we know about that?
No, we don't
What
know.
do we know about our contribution to brain surgery, which still goes on right now? Do you know they still do brain surgery in the villages without anesthesia, without putting you to sleep? You could be there eating a palm kernel while somebody's got your cranium open and doing stuff to it and you wouldn't even feel it. It's going on right now. Google it. What do you know about geography? What do you know about the natural herbs in medicine that Dibias or Trajas used to cure diseases before the European or the Muslim came to our shores with the Quran or the Bible?
Yodi.
What do you know about the Nsude pyramids in Abreba? What do you know about our architecture? What do you know about anything?
No, you don't.
Zero. You know nothing. And the reason why you don't know it because you've been miseducated with an educational system so flawed that it doesn't take into account your history, your experience, or your culture. You have nothing. You're only educated into somebody else's system. We are all, not me, because I know about my stuff. Not you, you know about your stuff. But the majority of so-called educated Africans are nothing but, what do you call them? Glorified servants. Alienated into the cultural values of other people. Uneducated, but literate. That's what you have parading all over the place in sub-Saharan Africa, in our diasporan African communities all over the world, in our governments back in Africa that can't seem to articulate any community economic policy or cultural policy that benefits the people. So in the 21st century, we've regressed so far back that even the 20th century is better than what most African communities are now. In the 21st century, we have been miseducated to think that women have no place in government, that women were never part of Africa's growth, that we didn't have queens and leaders and, you know, Dibias and doctors and economists and all that stuff. There were women before the European came. We have stopped promoting women as being equal percent of the 50% of the productive capacity of a nation, and we have internalized this European idea that women are inferior. We've forgotten that in African spirituality and culture, Chineke is dual, male and female. China, Eke, male and female. The duality of life and death is also imprinted in the duality of existence, which is male and female, and without male and female, life doesn't exist.
He said, oh, let me tell you something. You know, the one thing that does get me to you is you have individuals when they say a prayer, right? It has to be either amen, or it has to be, what is the other one? Shalom.
Shalom,
okay?
Yeah, the Jewish shalom.
We don't say Ise anymore. I can have some individuals and I'll say Ise, but they won't repeat Ise. They're Igbos. They have to say Shalom.
Yeah.
They have to say Amen.
That's the saddest thing I've ever seen.
This is what happens when you have been conditioned to believe that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what people say, you know, and the sad part of everything that I personally see is that those, you know, where Stephen Biko said that the most powerful tool in the hands of an oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Sometimes the oppressed are the ones who have no clue that they're being oppressed.
Yeah.
They're the ones don't want anything to do with any new knowledge. They are so full of knowledge, full of fake knowledge, that they don't have room for new information. They don't want to hear anything about who they are. They poo-poo it. They don't want to be a part of it. They isolate you. They don't want to be any part. See, this is why you have to be so sure and proud of yourself, so confident in who you are, that it doesn't matter. You don't need to be validated. And you find that when you believe in who you are, you find that your best friend is you. And if you don't know who that best friend is, you better start reacquainting with yourself. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you don't see people around you, if you don't see friends around you, it's okay. Stop trying to reach out to everybody so that you will have a collection of. If you don't have people who see things your way, so that you can now see things their way and both of you can come together and exchange ideas. If you're dealing with people who just believe in what they've been taught, that we as Black people should know our place.
Yeah.
We should know our place where we belong. We should not question anybody. There's some people who even think that if you are knowledgeable, if you know something about who you are, that you're dangerous, you're radical.
Yeah,
They
radicals. That's the key word right there. Radical for knowledge.
Radicalize our thoughts. You have allowed yourself, we have allowed ourselves to the point that you've got a governor who is eliminating everything that has to do with us. See, you don't talk about what people are doing to you when you allow it. Ultimately, what happens is nobody respects you because you don't respect yourself. You don't ask for respect when it's obvious you don't respect yourself. Your children can't speak their language. They don't eat the food. I have a little niece that was speaking my language. Then all of a sudden, she doesn't want to have anything to do with it because friends have told her, or whomsoever have told her, that thing, the language is that thing. I don't speak that thing. I speak English. Okay, so it is purely to create a colonial mindset that your things are not good enough. And those things that you are saying are not good enough, they're tapping into it. Look at our people, huh? Go to anywhere in the world, it's your people are there serving them. Is this forum going to change the mindset of people? Probably not. Mm-hmm. There may be some people who walk in and they hear it and they don't want to hear it, they just don't want to hear it. But the sad part of it is as long as we refuse to hear, as long as we refuse to take responsibility for our growth or lack thereof, we are always going to be the ones that people will mock, the ones that people take advantage of. Our children will suffer when we leave this earth. I have 2 grandsons, but I speak my language to them. And when I take them out, I make sure, I will tell you, when I'm with them, I don't speak English at all. When I'm out there with them, I don't speak English. They're learning it in the house. But when I'm out there, I want them to know that you're okay. It's okay to know this language. And then people are staring at them. How come they can speak that? Why not? There's nothing special about them speaking that. Their mother is Igbo. Their grandmother is Igbo. They should speak it. It's to their advantage. One more thing I wanted to share is the importance, just so you know, not every teacher speaks English well. Some teachers struggle. Yes, some teachers struggle. So teaching, for them who have a home language, teaching is better for them in the home language that they understand. So it makes it smoother. It makes it easier for them to teach the children. Some of them struggle trying to teach a foreign language to a child who knows, a home language. And the reason why I say a home language, and there's a professor, I can't think of his name right now, who also calls it a home language, is because it gives it dignity. It makes you understand because home is where everything lies. That's where love, that's where joy, that's where nourishment, all of that comes from home. So the home language is a good thing for them to know. It's a good thing, it's a good reference to use. Asụsụ Igbo, asụsụ Yoruba, Efik, Ibibio, Hausa, Akan, all of those are home languages. And the children need to know how to speak it. And if you can't speak it, or your children don't speak it, you have no right whatsoever to tell some woman or some man, why do you let your child speak that stuff? It's the right thing to do. I was at Walmart one time, and this man almost keeled over when he heard I was talking to the boys in Igbo, and he wanted, do you understand it? And he's got his kid there, and he's Igbo. He's so excited. My grandchildren can speak Igbo. Oh my God. I said, and you're scared? No, you know, they're in America now. I said, are you still Igbo? What's that got to do with anything? You're Igbo now, speak Igbo to them. Oh, they attend Igbo school.
And that's a farce. I've seen one of those in California. It's a joke.
That's a farce. It's a big joke. So that's why it's so important that we rethink. We rethink. They have schools now. They've done some research that shows that in learning situations where both the teacher and the learner are non-native users of the language of instruction, the teacher is having a difficulty. It's actually research. But once they are engaged in the home language and teaching those children, it works. It works better. And if you go in Nigeria, in the villages, what do they when they're doing the age grade? When you have the elders teaching the children, what language do they teach them with? Igbo.
Yeah.
The home language, because it makes understanding easier for them.
Yeah.
You mind taking all those little 10-year-old Igbo kids, right? And then you're trying to teach them how to be men in African culture or women in African culture. It would take you a whole lot, much longer for them to understand what you're talking about if you're not speaking in their language. And there's nothing I find more irritating that, hey, Che, this child, she speaks good English, oh. What? Yeah. But my question I always say, okay, that's good. Does he speak Igbo?
Mm-hmm. Does he speak good Igbo?
They tell you, no. Why not? Why not? So we are causing the damage to ourselves. We're causing the damage to our children. If we want a better Africa, and I'm focusing on Africa. If we want a better Africa, all the African parents should take stock of your home language. Make sure once your wife gives birth to that little baby, that she speaks nothing to that child but the language, the home language. You know why? Because ultimately they're going to learn English. They're going to learn English. If they live in America, they're going to teach them in English. But if they know that language, they don't lose it. You and I learned it. We speak English, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, we speak it. We can switch just like that into Igbo. And I'm not even talking about just regular Igbo. I'm talking about Mkporo Igbo. America.
And Mkporo na to mlege no be.
Kana ha se akpata. Ya Mkporo sukariam. The bottom line, what I'm saying is, once you learn the language, you don't lose it. So you want to make sure that the child has learned the language. And once they learn it, it's okay for them to learn foreign languages because they will. They will anyway. Without your effort, they will. They're going to learn it in school. They're going to learn it from their friends. They're going to learn that, But I remember a German friend of mine, because she's just so amazed that I'm speaking Igbo as I do. And she says that one of the things that she regrets is that her mother, who's German, never taught her German. She never, when her mother came to America, her grandmother came to America and had her mother, then they only spoke in English. And so the mother didn't know the language to teach her. So she doesn't know anything about German. So when they have a family gathering, when all the Germans come together, she feels so much at a disadvantage and at a loss because she can't speak it. So I've seen some Yoruba children, and I'm so proud of them. I've seen some Yoruba kids that speak real solid Yoruba, and they speak English too. So it tells me a lot about their parents, So anyway, I regretted myself when I came to the United States because I'm married to an African American. So I wanted him to understand English. I mean, understand me. So I was speaking in English. And of course, that's translated to my children. So I was speaking English. Well, I regretted that. And I don't want to make the same mistake with my grandsons. That's why they are learning Igbo. And of course, my children are, even at their age now, they're learning Igbo. They're determined, Kelena in particular. So, but anyway, make a long story short, it is so imperative that we teach our language to our children. It is so imperative. As a matter of fact, it has to be our badge of honor. It has to be a badge. It has to be. I'm almost tempted to say that every child born into an Igbo or Yoruba family by age 3 must be fluent in the language. If they're not fluent, you're not a good parent. Yes, I said it. You're not a good parent if they can't speak it. And worse yet, when mom and dad are Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa and the kids can't speak it, what's the excuse? Both of you speak the language. But you're very happy to enroll them in Chinese school. You're very happy to enroll them to teach them French. You're so happy that they're speaking, whatever European language that they're speaking, but you don't take the time to teach them African language. Yuji, go ahead.
Again, we talk about this miseducation of Africa and how we can create a certain cultural consistency to be able to unite us, practice unification of African community, and how we're going to go about doing that and really educating people of African ancestry. One of the most important things is the history of the people. What do we know about our ancestors, really? And when I talk about our ancestors, I'm talking about our ancestors in all areas of human endeavor, not just our own family lineage, but communally speaking. What do we really know about our ancestors 2,000 years ago? Unfortunately, we haven't had an educational system that stressed or emphasized that, right? We haven't had research, anthropological research, and also dug up history to look at fossils. From our perspective, to do research, not research that was done from without, from outside, about us. Because they could do research about us and tell the story about us their way to suit their own agenda, not to benefit us, but to have our so-called historians, anthropologists, philosophers, archaeologists, to embark on a journey of research to find out a little bit more about our history and about our ancestors. It is absolutely imperative because you cannot know where you're going without knowing where you've been. You cannot even understand where you are today without knowing where you've been, let alone chart a course for the future. So history is very important. We have to emphasize that. We have to have institutions, government agencies in education, taxed with this, idea that we really need to do some serious research using the scientific tools of anthropology, archaeology, social tools of history to be able to decipher some of these unknowns that have plagued us as a people of African ancestry. So history is very important, and we need to really make a concerted effort to learn about our history and the contributions that we've made to civilized behavior, so that when we're in school, we're not sitting over here talking about the Vasco da Gamas, talking about Abraham Lincoln that has nothing to do with me, talking about, Ferdinand Magellan, Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, talking about everybody else but us. Secondly, with this cultural consistency, we need to emphasize spirituality, not religion in its etymology, but spirituality. When the God you worship doesn't look like you, I'm sorry, your chances of making progress in this world is pretty much zero, because you're always going to justify your worth by standards that are not of your own choosing. And the first standard that all human beings think about is their relationship with Chineke, with God. And that brings up the idea that we're created in God's image, not just the spiritual component of it, but the physical component of being created in God's image, in Chineke's image. And if Chineke is white, then you cannot justify physically being created in the image of Chineke. Even though you got 5 fingers like a white guy, you have 2 eyes like a European, you have 2 nostrils, 2 lungs. You have those physical components that is, standard amongst human beings, quote, because you have the same eyes, 2 eyes as a Chinese, and all that stuff. But color-wise, we don't look at how many fingers we have. We look at color, what you see in the mirror. That is the image of Chineke that all human beings ascribe to when they talk about being in the image of God. Not if God has 2 lungs or however many teeth you got in your mouth. Not if whether God has 2 ears. They talk about color. So if the God, which is what you revere more than anything else in this world, if you believe in a creator, if that Chineke looks nothing like you in terms of physical attributes of coloration or culture, you're in trouble. Again, you will always justify your worth by standards that are not of your own choosing. And if your God is white, then you look at the European as superior to you and you inferior, and they will exploit that. They did it by force through colonization, through slavery first. Then when they ended slavery, the transatlantic slavery, they developed a different type of slavery called colonization. And that happened in the late 19th century when Africa was divvied up amongst the same people that were part of the transatlantic slave trade. So it never ended. And that exploitation still continues today. In our educational system, we are slaves to the master. We are slaves to the oppressor. We have suffered a level of inferiority complex that if your name, a female's name in Igbo language is Ngozi, but you rather call yourself Blessing, even though Blessing interpreted in Igbo language is Ngozi, but to you, Ngozi now becomes something that is devilish because your oppressor's religion said so. You change your name from Kunta Kinte to Toby. Some of us are now walking around with the name Sunday. It's all Christianized into our mind. You have Mondays. You have Fridays. You have Sundays. I'm waiting on Tuesday and Thursday. That's coming up. You can take that to the bank. You're going to go to Africa one day and you ask somebody, what is your name? And they're going to tell you, my name is Wednesday. Don't be shocked, because Sunday, Friday, and Monday already exists. This idea that you're created in the image of Chineke, but that image looks nothing like you, where everybody that believes that they were created in the image of Chineke see themselves in that image based on their color. It's just the truth. It is the way it is. So there's a level of inferiority complex that has been embedded into us where nothing African is extolled by us. We see everything African as inferior. You see your color as inferior. You see your religion and spirituality as inferior. You see your name as inferior. And you see your clothing as inferior. And the only way to elevate yourself, to make you feel like you're civilized, is to take on the characteristics of your oppressor. And that includes going to court and wearing a white wig in the judicial system in Africa. Does that make you know the law? Is that part of the decorum for law in your culture? No, it's a decorum for law based on their definition. Because obviously, if I go into court with an African outfit, I'm not as smart as the lawyer wearing black and a white wig. Well, I beg to differ. I bet you I could out-argue that lawyer. The idea that I had the impetus to walk into a court as a lawyer dressed in an African outfit tells me I'm already smarter than the other guy. And I will wipe the floor with them when it comes to arguments. The third thing is language. As a matter of fact, the real basis of culture is language, not the color of your skin. Europeans are all white. The Germans speak German. That's the basis of the German culture, their language. The French speak French. Scandinavians speak whatever they speak up there. The Chinese, the Japanese. Europe, the Spaniards. Europe is full of white folks. Most of them, if not all, speak different languages. I mean, the Portuguese and the Spanish don't speak the same language, and they're neighbors. The British and the French don't speak the same language. They're only 90 miles apart from one another when you cross the ocean. You know, the low, I forgot what it's called over there. Germany, Belgium, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Italy, Greece, you name it. They're all white folks. But the basis for their culture is their language. That's where it all comes from. Same thing in Africa. You got dark-skinned Africans, light-skinned Africans, caramel Africans, all housed on the same continent. But the basis of distinction is not their skin color. It is the language that comes from religion. That is where culture develops. So why is it that all the cultures that dominate the world today are culturally original, and we haven't understood and learned that we need to do the same thing? Africa is huge. It's got 1.2 million people in it, but I'm going to discount the North Africans and just deal with sub-Saharan Africans. We need to find commonality in our culture, find a common language, and re-educate ourselves so that we can unite on all levels or all spheres of human endeavor.
That's right. That's right. I just want to read, thank you, Yudi. Want to read what Akachi wrote here. If language is our culture and our culture is our immune system, don't teach your language to the colonizer. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, the Japanese don't teach you Japanese. You got to learn Japanese to go to Japan to do business.
There you go. There's a purpose in doing that. That's right. It's so imperative that we are learning our languages, let alone worry about teaching anybody. You know, you can't even teach what you don't know. And then what happens is when they do learn it, you know, some of us get so excited. Wow, they speak it. Don't you know why they learned it? Because now they can communicate with the natives when you can't.
Yeah.
You can't, because you have rejected your language. And then they've come to the, you know, there are lots of Europeans there who can speak Igbo, speak Yoruba, okay? And they know why they're learning that. Obviously, they want to communicate with the community, but you don't. So you get excited when you see that they, oh my God, they can speak it, they can speak it. And then when they ask you, here's a European asking you, what does this mean? And you can't tell him. You Yoruba. You can't tell him. Because you don't know. You got to go find somebody that can explain to this foreigner what you refuse to know. Again, let's be honest. Let's just be honest. Parents are the problem, not the children. A child who can't speak a language is not their fault. Because there's no child at early age that you can say, did you say no to your mom or your dad that you didn't want to learn the language? Of course not. They learn what you teach them. But research has shown that the only way that you can build better self-confidence in people who have a home language is to make sure that they understand that it's okay, that that language is beneficial, that that's who they are, and it's okay to speak it. It's not vernacular. Because Kagame of Rwanda, he pointed at all of this. When we see a Chinese person speaking Chinese, what do, Yudi? We're excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think it's an honorable thing. When we see a German speaking German, it's honorable. When we see a French speaking French, it's honorable. But when you see an African man speaking his language, then you don't say he's speaking his language. You say he's speaking his vernacular. You read that information. Share that.
You say that the person is stupid because they are immersed in their own traditional cultural language and they become stupid. You this level of self-hatred where you find no value in yourself. You find no value in anything about you. But the French find value in being French. And as a matter of fact, what the French people export, their biggest export is their Frenchhood.
Yes.
Whatever that means, fashion, bourgeois, and all this, whatever it is. The British, what do they put out there? Their export is their pomposity, and their inferiority complex. The Germans, same thing. What do people put out there? They put out what they think of themselves out there. That's your export. Your export is your culture, your language. Everything about you that you revere is what you export out there.
And it doesn't make you radical. That's what I don't understand.
Radical. That's the thing.
Yeah, when you're trying to be who you are, after all, if you say that God created humanity, did he make a mistake? Did she make a mistake? So what is the offense if I want to honor my creator by being all that I was made to be? But everybody who wants to promote who they are becomes radical. They call you, you're radicalized. Or you don't want to be with her or him because, they think radical. What is radical about? But you know what? I said this to you. And people need to understand that. If you go to, for those of you who go to, been to France, this is where I found out. If you go to Paris and you don't speak French, they'll let you know that you don't speak French.
Of course.
They'll let you know. Because they value their language over anything else. Yeah. And so if you really want something, better take that French book. I went to a restaurant. I speak a little French. So when I went to a restaurant there, the woman was just, she had her head up in the sky, like, because I came with these Americans and they couldn't speak French. So everybody was directing me to speak French to this woman because quite frankly, she wasn't really even going to honor us ordering anything in English. She kept asking which one of us speak French. Does it matter? Now, I'm not saying it's like that throughout, but I had to order the food in French for us to enjoy our meal because I had no attitude, and I was in the hotel and all that kind of stuff. They look at you and they whisper, Not all of them do that, of course, but many of them do,
I think you've experienced this with me, actually. We experienced it, and then I experienced it again. But you and I flew to Nigeria, and I talk about this language being the basis of culture and how it unites the people. And you're just talking about the restaurant and all that. And we got on a plane, And for them to communicate with every other person on that plane who is Nigerian, whether you're Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, whatever it is, they spoke English on that plane. And right after giving instructions on the life vest, and if the plane is going to crash, who's going to jump off the plane, who's not, and get your life shirt, life jacket, you pull this, and the air, opens up, and all that stuff. After the giving instruction in English, because whether you're Kenyan or Igbo or Yoruba or whatever, if you're black on that plane, you should speak English. They gave that instruction. Then once they got to give the instruction, then they gave it in German. Even though there was maybe one German passenger in there. They gave it in German. You start to think to yourself, if you had an airline company, right? Ethiopian Airlines or Kenyan Airlines or whatever airline company that is African. How do you give those instructions? You give the instructions in the language of your colonizer.
Mm-hmm.
You don't give that instruction in the language that is central to any sub-Saharan African. That's why for Black people, people of African ancestry, to unite, first and foremost, language has to be the basis of this unification. Because it is the
we have to argue first over
we're going to fight over, is it going to be Zulu, is it going to be Ashanti, everybody's going to do, I'm bigger than you, you're bigger than me, I'm Jamaican, I'm from Haiti, and they forget the general purpose of the exercise in the first place. That's why, you hear me talking about all these people that claim they're woke, I know now, it's the now, I'm from Kemet. Some of them are so woke, they now think they're Cherokee Indians, whatever, or Native Americans. Whatever it is. But then the so-called woke can work with each other under a common cultural focus to achieve the same goal. You forget that in Christianity, you have the Catholic Church, you have the Anglican Church, you have the Baptist Church, you have all the different Christian denominations, all of them reading the same Bible, all of them having the same goal to dominate. Islam is the same thing. The what you call the Shiites, what's the other one? The Arabian one, the Shiites and I forgot the name of it. But there are several. There are about 4 major Islamic schools of thought, right? Mm-hmm. But all of them reading the Quran. They all have the same objective to dominate you with Islam.
Yes.
Regardless of whether you're a Shiite, whether you're the Saudi Arabian version of it, my memory just kind of messing with me this morning. I know what I'm talking about, but the naming thing, I'm like my dad now. Sometimes my father forgets the name of his children. He starts to call everybody from the firstborn to the lastborn until somebody says, "It's me." He says, "Come here." So I'm going through that same phase right now. But that's what it is. You see? So people out there in the metasphere, the universe, diaspora, whatever, we have to have the same mindset in terms of what our goals are. Are we really about trying to change the narrative? Are we really about trying to create a better future for our children? Are we really about trying to investigate the past to find out about where we've been, why we're here, and where we're going? Our history is not just about slavery and colonization. We cannot look at ourselves from the point of view of the beggar asking for forgiveness, always asking the master to give us equal rights that was already ordained to us by God. Fela said, "You cannot give me equal rights. Equal rights belongs to me. It was mine when God created me, when Chineke created me. I had equal rights as a human being. I don't need nobody giving me no equal rights."
Yes.
And then anytime somebody of African ancestry, and I'm going to emphasize this, when somebody of African ancestry speaks the truth and wants better for our people, he is labeled a radical by the colonizer and the enslaver. But if a Chinese wants to do something, he's not called a radical. If a Jew is trying to do something for Jewish people, he's not called a radical. Hell, when an Arab is trying to do something for the Arab, he's not called a radical. When a South American is trying to do something for the Inca or Aztec, if that is even possible, they're not called radicals. But when it's a black man or woman speaking the truth and trying to do for us, they are labeled radical. This is just some racist stuff designed to malign and demonize us, so that as a person of African ancestry, you don't have the right to ask for equality. This is their definition of you and the description of you and the definition and description of your purpose in your existence. You must remain a slave. You must be colonized. You must justify your worth by standards that were forced upon you. You must stay assimilated in Western culture and have no right to demand better. Because if you do, you end up like Patrice Lumumba, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela. You will be maligned like Agụmakwụkwọ Onyoha was maligned in Nigeria. And it's so funny that the only people that really recognize his greatness were white folks. Malcolm X was murdered. Any black person, Stephen Biko, that asks for something better for our people is labeled radical and murdered. I don't know where my own life is going to take me, but I could tell you right now, I stand with them. We need to do better. And the only way for us to be respected by people on the outside is to do everything that we possibly can to become relevant by being culturally original in history, in our language, in our spirituality. We need to investigate our past through anthropology, archaeology, examine our history, find out what our contributions to civilized behavior has been, look at the Creator as being just like us. Quit going to church every Sunday and bowing to a God that looks nothing like you, or going into the mosque and bowing to a culture, spiritual culture that has nothing to do with you. Muhammad never did anything for the African. Jesus Christ did not talk about what concerned you. He talked about what concerned the Jews and the Roman, assuming that he actually existed. But who were our own messiahs? Why don't we talk about Agụmakwụkwọ Onyoha, Mbonu Ojike? Why don't we talk about such people? Why don't we talk about Kwame Nkrumah? Why don't we talk about Patrice Lumumba? What these people, Thomas Sankara, what they actually stood for? Who is teaching that in our schools and in our communities? It is sad, but man, I tell you, we have a lot of self-examination to do. I can't hear you.
I'm saying, before we can complain about what other people are doing to us, we have to check what we're doing to ourselves. And, you know, Akachi asked a question if we could teach Igbo every, you know, I think she said once a week, you know. Well, one of the things that's exciting, and I just wanted to announce that now, August the 7th, you guys hold that date. I am going to send out, it's going to be posted on Chiism Live. Chiism Live, and also chiism.org, the flyer, because we have introduction about the Chiefs University pre-launching, so to speak. It's going to be on the 7th, and all that information will be there. The good news, Akachi, is that we're going to be teaching Igbo as well. That's a class that can be taught, okay? And it will be taught by people who know exactly how to teach it, so that it's easy for you to learn. So we are very excited about that. I agree with you. It should be taught, and we have put together people who are going to do just that. So Igbo will be taught. And our goal also is to teach other African languages as we go along, because that's very important. So we are so excited. Oh my God, I can't even contain it, or I'm trying to contain it. But to be the ones to have a university, an African spiritual centered university, that takes guts. That takes guts. You understand what I'm saying?
Radical if you want.
That takes pride. That means that, hey, we know we've got something to offer to the whole. We've got something to offer to humanity. We are not inconsequential. Our spirituality is not inconsequential. Our traditions are not inconsequential. We need to be able to provide our children somewhere to go to learn a little bit more about themselves. You know, written by African people. That's going to really change a lot of minds, a lot of mindsets, consciousness. So we are the Consciousness University. If you want to know about who you are, this is where you go. And the good thing about it, what's exciting about Chiefs University, is that it's African people who have given all. The College of Propaganda, College of Propaganda, is the ones that's giving us our accreditation. So you see, we're not looking for anyone to provide us with accreditation. We're looking to ourselves, and that is what we need to start seeing. Because when we talk about this accreditation, right, who is accredited? Look at who's accredited. Even when you are in Nigeria, who's doing the accreditation? They have to evaluate how European you are.
Yeah.
You know, your school is. But we are quite satisfied with being in the position to provide that kind of service to our community. A big, beautiful, right now is going to be an online school, obviously, very lovely school with, with the lovely classrooms and what have you. And then our goal, obviously, ultimately, is to have a physical building. Where we're going to have that building is, we're going to have in Africa, but we're also going to have here in the United States. So it is exciting. And please, by next Sunday, I'll let you know where to go and get that. I apologize that we did not do the retreat this month as we were supposed to. Something came up that there's just no way we could do it. So we are going to plan another opportunity for us to get together and meet each other. We've had the opportunity to meet Ukunach Ugochukwu. I have not met Akachi Azubike. I certainly would love to do all of that. And some of other individuals. Hopefully, when we have our retreat, we'll send out that invitation, and all of you can come so that we can meet and have a rousing libations with each other. I want to thank all of you for being here. Dibia UD, of course, you do. Thank you for all your your insights and all the information. Akachi Azubike, thank you so very much. Akachi says that she can't wait to meet us. We cannot wait to meet you, Akachi.
Yes.
Such a brilliant young woman. I certainly want to meet you. I'm telling you that right now. When I go to Nigeria again, I'll see Ukuna Charles. But who knows, in the very near future, perhaps we can bring you here to come see us too and meet everybody else here. I think
Ukuna, such a nice young man.
He's
proved his worth. He certainly has proved his worth, and yeah.
I want to meet a lot of all these people who come to our program, and I'm hoping that once we send out that invitation, it doesn't have to be a crowd. It's just I just want to meet you guys. We just want to meet you guys and have a wonderful. I just found out there's a property here that's owned by African Americans. It belonged to the person who bought it. The ancestors used to be slaves, and they have this fantastic building, a land where it's now being used for all sorts of things. And perhaps in the very near future, we can use that for a grand event. So anyway, I want to thank everyone, and I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday. And until then, I want you to be good to yourselves, be good to your family. If you have an elderly person in your family and you have not said anything, you have not gone to visit them, this is a good time to do so. Because remember, our elders are closest to Chineke and closest to the ancestors, and they shouldn't be left by themselves and not receive family support and phone calls and what have you. So do that. If you have somebody in your family that's an elder, take the time today and make sure that you pick up that phone and call the elder and say, hey, I'm here for you. Because I'll tell you right now, they will appreciate it. They will definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay? Yes. So I want to end with this comment by Akachi here. I have a few seconds. It says, omission is the disregard and even denial of African knowledge and wisdom when it's not taught. That's true. Very true. Very true. And denying denial of ourselves, and we need to stop that. We need to change all of that, and that's what we're trying to do. So again, thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next Sunday on Cheesem Live. You all take care. Yagazie.
Yagazie.